All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's pre-lock show where I'm here to talk through this slate, go game by game, talk through injury news, show what I'm doing in the domination station, and, as we go through, to answer some of your questions, talk through some of your concerns, all the good stuff. JM, what's good? Hope you're doing well. Cujo, also, hope you're doing all right. Boy Badass 1204 said, did a back test for a 9-game slate, and the owner percentage was around 80%, with the final points pretty high. Any thoughts or suggestions? No, for NBA DFS, I don't really mess with ownership percentages or any of that. You really just put my leverage plays in and make some small adjustments and trust the DS to do the rest. But I never think back testing is a bad thing. It's just something I've done enough of and haven't really needed to make any changes the more I've dug into it. So let's jump into it, y'all. We have a big slate. What's up, Code Res? Hope you're doing well. The first game on the slate is probably my favorite game on the slate, which might surprise people. The spread is pretty wide, 11.5 points. So something to be a little nervous about. We know the Wizards suck, but that's why I like attacking them when it comes to DFS. So we have the Spurs going up against the Wizards. Like I said, a matchup we all get excited to see. Or is this awful Wizards team on the slate? The Spurs are pretty healthy. No real injury news to talk about at this point. So let's look at who I'm forcing exposure to. Victor Wembanyama is very hit or miss. He's a volatile stud, but in soft matchups, he's someone that I just want to make sure I have exposure to. I have a 15% min on him, just making sure I get over the field on a stud that's not showing up enough in my early runs. So you see he's showing up right at 15%. And then De'Aaron Fox, he's also been a bit volatile. But again, soft matchup, stud that's only 8,300. I like this spot for him. And again, highest game total on the slate. I'm looking for reasons to play these guys. So he's someone I put a 10% min on. Castle has just been really good. So I put a 3% min on him. It looks like his ownership went down, so I'm okay putting a 2% min, just allowing me to mix him in. I think we have better value and better plays on the slate, but he's just someone I didn't want to forget about. And then I have a like on Jeremy Sohan. He's someone that the sim model liked, and I wanted to follow that. He's also been okay. I don't trust his role on this team too much, but at 4,600, he made sense. Trusting the sim model here, I put a like on him. He's showing up in about 13% of my line, so some decent leverage there, which I like. And then that's pretty much it for the Spurs. No one else outside of those guys. Soft matchups, that's it. That's all I'm focusing on on this slate. JM said on Scott Method that he pinned on the Discord, do you know how the Crow exposures? I don't use that. John said everything is good, man. Good to see you. Good to see you too. And I'm glad things are going well. Hopefully things continue going in that direction. Last week was good for us when it came to NBA DFS. So hopefully that trend continues as well. And then let's see. For the Wizards, when it comes to injury news, Washington. We have Sar out. Middleton's not playing yet. Smart is out. Bay is out. Gill's been out for a good bit. So there's injury news, and that's part of why we're getting exposure to these guys. Matchup against the Spurs is pretty neutral. The Wizards just find themselves in good game environments, and so that's why we tend to see a lot of these guys show up. Keyshawn George, 4,300. Maybe it's Keyshawn George, 4,300. I think he's definitely viable on this slate. He was standing out for me in the sim model as well, so I have a like on him, trying to get him to show up a little bit more for me. Rashawn Holmes, he shows up by himself. He's been really good. Hopefully he keeps that up. We know in the past he's been a little hard to trust, but the past is in the past. Stay on this track, Holmes. I'm counting on you, man. And then Bilal, he's someone that the sim model likes. Again, good game environment. I'm very comfortable with him. Jordan Poole was showing up for me as a core play. I like Jordan Poole just because of the game environment. Matchups a little meh. He's been better. Well, I feel like that 60-point game is doing a lot of heavy lifting for Jordan Poole. And part of that distrust, the fact that he hasn't been in the best of form outside of that one game, is part of why I had to take the like off of him. he's still showing up in a lot of my lines. Like you can see Holmes is showing up in 48% of my lines. I'm super over the field on him. Jordan Poole is showing up in 46% of my lines. Almost a leverage play for me, just happening naturally in the domination station. We have Keyshawn George with that he's showing up over field weight exposure, which I like because this is a game I want to get a lot of exposure to. And then Kalabali is only showing up in about 1% of my lines. Again, this is a game I want to prioritize. So I'm willing to put a 9% min on him here just to make sure he's showing up a bit more. Because this is a game I want to focus on and I want to make sure I get a good amount of exposure to it. Let's see. Code Rez said, play NHL and NFL, new to NBA today, first timer. Can you go over the basic optimizer setup and strategy? Yeah, man. I'll show you what I do. As you can tell, there's a lot of different processes that you can utilize. For me, I've won 100K twice, and I've won quite a few like tournaments in general. So this is the setup I have. But there's also coaches like Scott who has his method in the NBA coaching channel that's pinned. And then a lot of coaches, you can reach out to them and see if they have something they like to do as well. So I always just say, do what works for you. This is what works for me. I use tournament mode first and foremost. I don't change anything here. I keep it super simple. Let the DS do a lot of the heavy lifting here. I don't change uniques because I control a lot of what the DS is going to do for me. I have 150 lines. That's my usual. And I don't change anything here. I will sometimes uncheck prioritize completing lineups above min-max exposure if I'm not seeing the guys I put mins on, but that doesn't really happen as much these days. So yeah, to answer your question, Code Res, it's not like NFL or NHL where I do have settings that I utilize and I don't change as much. For me, I found to win first place, I personally have to control what I want to do. But again, there's other ways of going about it. Phil said, what's up? Let's get this money. Agreed, man. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Okay, where are we? Minnesota against the Cavs. So, forewarning, the rest of this slate gets a little weird with injury news. We are waiting on a good amount still. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice I'll probably give to new DFS members. It really doesn't matter what you do, but staying from a process standpoint, but staying up to date on the news and late swapping is really the biggest game changer you can have. And for me, leverage plays, but not something for everybody. So for the Timberwolves, we have Anthony Edwards listed as questionable. That is huge because Ant has been really good recently, even in tough matchups, which this would be a tough matchup if he plays. 9,700, he's not cheap. If he's out, we're looking at We're looking at Rudy Gobert sees a boost. We don't know if Mike Conley's going to play, but quite a few, even when guys like Dillingham, really just all the starters see a boost. Mike Conley is questionable. That's another boost for Rob Dillingham, another boost for if he gets ruled out. So things could get interesting depending on how news plays out. Even without the news, SimModel liked Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, and Jaden McDaniels. So I just put a like on those three. Naz Reid is showing up in about 48% of my lines. I'm going back and forth on deciding to take that like off. Ideally, I'm just around 20-25% on a guy like Naz Reid. I like him, but I don't feel like I need him in half my lines today. So that like is probably going to go off. Rudy Gobert, let's see, is he showing up enough? Yeah. I'm going to hold off on the Rudy Gobert min, but once we get that Ant news, if he's out, I want Rudy Gobert in my lines tonight. And then Jaden McDaniels is in a soft spot too. Tough matchup for a lot of these guys, but Cleveland, they've been struggling against small forwards in particular this season. So McDaniels is slightly more viable for me just from a matchup standpoint on this slate too. So none of these guys I'm putting mins on, but Naz Reid is the only guy showing up in my lines so far. And I'm not going to do anything to change that unless we get that Anthony Edwards news or Mike Conley news, primarily for the main fact just being I don't like picking on the Cavs. Cavs also have a tough matchup going up against the Timberwolves. From a injury news standpoint, these guys pretty healthy. Max Strus is questionable. So if he doesn't play, then DeAndre Hunter and Sam Merrill will probably see a good amount of run in those spots. But with some of the good value we have on this slate, a guy like Sam Merrill would be viable at 3,300 if Strus is out, but I wouldn't get overly excited about it. The only play I'm forcing exposure to here is Jared Allen at 6,400. Again, tough matchup against Minnesota, but pretty low owned at 7%, 6,400. He's really just too cheap for this spot. And so I just wanted to make sure I forced exposure to him. Some model liked him a little bit too. Let's see. Code Res. So like NHL, there are great point. There's no stacking options. Really, stacking is not a priority in the NBA at all. It is not as formulaic like that. Boy Badass said, how close to the game time you recommend entering your final lineups considering injuries? So that's something that I adjust to every slate. Most slates I really am just kind of refreshing the domination station, which is down here. Something you definitely need to make sure you do is refresh the DS up until lock. I'll usually do like my last run around 6:55, something like that. And then I'll upload it from there. But again, it's important to late swap based off of news that we get and between each game if you want to do that. I don't always late swap between each game. I just do it if there's news that I feel like changes the way I want to attack the slate. William, what's up, man? Agreed. Let's get it. All right. Next up, we have the Atlanta Hawks going up against the Magic. Hawks are pretty healthy. Nothing new. Tough thing for them is they have a brutal matchup against Orlando. I'm not attacking the Magic with these guys. Trae Young was not great last time out. He was pretty good last time out. He struggled against Milwaukee, surprisingly. But yeah, tough matchup against Orlando here for all of these guys. No one stood out for me on Atlanta tonight. And none of them are showing up in my lines. And so there's too many games to waste time on that situation. Flip side of it, though, the Magic have a soft matchup going up against Atlanta here. And Franz and Paolo, they've been a little hit or miss so far over the last few games, but in a soft spot, I'm willing to take a shot on these guys. I haven't been playing them up until this point, but here I will. So I have a 15% min on Paolo and a 20% min on Franz. I prefer Franz just because he's been a bit more consistent. We haven't seen that upside from Paolo yet, but I definitely want exposure to both of them on this one. And then let's see, any other Magic showing up? Nope, we see Paolo and Franz showing up right where we have them. And then a little bit of Jonathan Isaac, but I'm still going to be under the field. Let's see. Code Res said, if running a 20 max, how much randomization would you use? I started off 20 maxing, but I don't really 20 max too much these days. I don't use randomization when I 150. In 20 maxes, I would be more open and willing to use it. I think for me, it always just comes down to how much do I trust these players. For today, I trust my top half of my cores pretty solidly, and so I don't feel like I need too much randomization. For today's slate, if I was 20 maxing, I would probably think about like 10 to 15%. There's enough games where you could make a case for more, but I am not high on randomization in general, so I always lean towards less is more. And then let's see. So for the Hornets, they have a tough matchup. Lowest game total on the slate. And again, brutally not great matchup for them going up against Brooklyn. And I'm not looking at any of these guys tonight. Miles Bridges has the softest matchup. Again, Brooklyn, they've been struggling against forwards so this season, giving up the 5th most fantasy points to forwards, but I think there's better spots. Bridges at 8,800 still seems a bit ridiculous to me. I'm not taking a shot here on this team. The one player who is DFS viable for me is Nick Smith Jr. He is questionable, but assuming he plays tonight, at 4K, he's seeing enough minutes. You need his shot to fall. He's very scoring dependent. He doesn't do a lot outside of that. Without anything, he's showing up in 45% of my lines. He was someone the sim model liked. I had to take the like off of him to make sure he wasn't showing up in 99% of my lines. 45% is fine with him being 20% owned. Don't really want to go much higher than 45 though. And then Nurkic is showing up in one line. He's fine. He's fine at 3,900. I don't love the play. Nurkic hasn't played NBA basketball in a long time, or it's been months. And so he shouldn't see too much run tonight. I just think there's probably better plays on the slate. He can be efficient at times. Really, still, this is a pretty neutral matchup. Nets are ranked 15th in the NBA in fantasy points allowed to bigs. It's just hard for me to get excited about this spot. There's other centers I like more, so those spots are valuable. All right, next up, we have the Nets going up against the Hornets. For the Nets, again, a spot I'm just not overly excited about. Lowest game total on the slate. From an injury news standpoint, we do have D'Angelo Russell listed as questionable. Let's see, is there anything else? Clowney's out. Bogdanovich is out. Nothing new, really. But if Russell misses, then that's a big boost to a guy like Keon Johnson. He's really the only net I would look at in that situation. Is Johnson showing up at all for me without that news? No, he's not showing up in any of my lines. So I think Johnson's a viable DFS player, but there's just other players I like a lot more on this slate than him. Code Res, no, I don't use the sim boost option at all for NBA. There's just not as much correlation. I use the sim model, which is a tool that we have here that just kind of shows value consistencies based off of pricing. And I have used this model to find some like low end or low owned plays that have a lot of upside. I really just focus on players that have percentages in the 7x column or higher, but you can also use it for a lot of different reasons or ways. But yeah, Nets are not high on my priority list today. Next up, we have the Celtics against the Heat. This is a game that's hard to talk about, guys. It's tough. We have Jason Tatum listed as questionable and Jaylen Brown listed as questionable, and they're in a really shitty matchup against the Miami Heat. So you don't really want to play any of these guys at all. But with Tatum and or Brown potentially missing, we have to just highlight how good of a play these Celtic players become if Tatum and or Brown end up missing. So for now, I'm not overly excited about it. I do like Derek White just because the Heat have been struggling against guards, primarily whoever Hero is on, which is where White should be with Drew Holiday out. So White is the one player I'm going to put a 6% min on no matter what. But if Tatum or Brown get ruled out, we're playing the Celtics and you're going to have to feel good about it. Let's see. Appreciate that, JM. Really do. You're good, Code Res. Questions are good. No worries, man. Especially, I forgot that there was there's no NFL anymore. So there's some new people tuning in. So I'm sure those are just questions a lot of people have. Tattoo, no NHL. I'm bummed because I was looking forward to playing NHL this weekend with no NBA, and I realized there's no NHL this week, so freaking sucks, but it's okay. I guess there's Daytona to look forward to. All right, for the Heat, things get a little bit more interesting for these guys without Tyler Hero. Let me see. Even with him out, projections are not looking great for anyone on this team still. Personally, let me look at the matchups a little bit. Miami. On a 9-game slate, these spots just matter a little bit less. Yeah, it's brutal. Celtics are just such a good defensive team. Let me do a quick lookup of if there's any major usage rate increases that might make us look past the matchup. Because the interesting thing here is everyone's going to kind of shrug it off because it's a tough matchup. But if there's even a slight usage rate increase here with how cheap the Heat players are, I'm a little open to taking a shot. Let me look at Miami. Jaime and Drew. Jaime Jaquez and Drew Smith are all out. Okay, I'll come back to that. 2 weeks. Damn. I'll be watching AHL and ECHL code. What language are you speaking, Tattoo? I don't even know what those words mean or those letters mean. JM said on FanDuel, the Lakers game is on it. Can you go over that? I didn't look at it too closely, JM, because I was kind of mad that we don't get it on DK. But let me look at it quickly. I think really the biggest question you have is, are you open to taking a shot on Luka Doncic at whatever his crazy ass price tag is? Let me go ahead and pull that up. How much is Luka on FanDuel today? Because if I'm assuming we're not gonna get him at a discount on FanDuel, but if he was a little cheap, it'll be an easy play. But if he's normally priced, probably gonna pass. Yeah, look at 10,800. There is no discount there. I don't think he sees his usual run. That's the main reason why I wouldn't do it. He's so low owned, only 1% owned. If you're 150 maxing, I would probably put like a 2% min on Luka just for shits and gigs, but it's hard to get overly excited about that when he hasn't played in weeks since December, really. So, yeah, there's not really too much to look at for me, JM. I would look at LeBron, and that's probably it. Maybe Kessler or Markkanen. Bigs against the Lakers without AD could become a bit of a trend. But yeah, JM, I'm not really great at talking about it. I just didn't look at it. X Factor King said, where do you find usage rates, especially when players miss? There's a ton of tools that I use. I use Court IQ primarily for when a player misses. Usage rates more broadly you can find in the research station on DFS Army too. Yeah, Tattoo, I can tell you're speaking another language. That is definitely an addiction. Tattoo. Sweet. Luke is going to drop 50. We'll see. We'll see. I would love to see it because I hope he does well. I just don't think he comes back like that. Darius J, that's tough with LeBron in the mix. He has to get used to playing with LeBron, which is different. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to do fine together. I'm not really worried about that. I'm just worried about how long he's been out. And I don't think you just toss him right back into playing 30 minutes, but I could be wrong. No worries, JM. No worries. So let's see. Usage rates with Drew, Jaime, and Tyler out. Kashad Johnson actually sees the highest increase in usage at 9.9%. Then Kevin Love at 7.7%. Then Josh Christopher at 5.7%. And then Terry Rozier at 5.5%. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I barely know who some of those guys are. But I do like Terry Rozier's price tag. Let me look a little bit closer at him. Matchup is tough. I have to keep reminding myself about that before I get too excited about the play. But Terry hasn't been bad. It hasn't been great, though. How much is he? 4,800. He's been scoring like 33, 30, 36 fantasy points. Yeah, I see why no one's playing him. I spent too much time on him. I'm not playing the Heat. Even with Terry out or Tyler out, unless the domination station boosts someone's projection, no one's standing out for me in this spot. All right, next up we have the Golden State Warriors going up against the Bucks. Thing about the Golden State Warriors is Stephen Curry is listed as questionable. He's in a fantastic spot. We love playing guards against Milwaukee, but he's questionable. So we have to calm down a little bit. Can't get too pumped to play him yet. And if he's out, we're looking at guys like Podziemski, who I already like. Some model likes him a bit, and Hield, who are both in good spots. So once again, another stud that is questionable that we'll have to consider. Jimmy Butler would see a boost if Curry's out. I think they look pretty solid together last time, but granted they were going up against the Bulls. So I'm not taking a shot on Jimmy yet, but if he's out, that would probably make Podziemski, Hield, and a guy like Jimmy much more viable on this slate for me. But as of right now, Buddy Hield is showing up in 47% of my lines. That's a bit much. So I'm going to take the like off of him. But clearly, obviously, y'all know I still like him. And then I'll rerun it. And then Podziemski showing up in 36% of my lines. I feel better about Podziemski on this slate than Hield. Just a little bit less streaky shooting or shooting reliant. And I'll rerun it and see what we get from there. Yeah, exactly. I was just like, usage rates at that point doesn't even matter. Let Like, you do a lot of individual player adjustments. You have to know the NBA well to do that. Yeah, exactly, Code Res. That's really been my strategy, which I know isn't great for everybody, but it was worked for me. Darius, yeah, I agree, Don Juan. I can't just play Terry Rozier anymore. I mean, I haven't really at all this season, but you can't just play him unless he's super cheap. Just doesn't have a lot of upside these days. What's the website for Court IQ? Is that a Roto Grinders thing? Yeah, it is. Roto Grinders. That's where I use Court IQ from them. Really good tool they have. All right. So we talked about Golden State for the Bucks. All right. This is where things get interesting. So the one and only Giannis is out tonight, which means we have another Bobby Portis night. And we saw what happened last time out. Granted, this is a tougher matchup against Golden State, but Bobby's been pretty consistent in these spots. I'm not going to overthink it now. I'm just going to keep that like on him. Damian Lillard is questionable. That would be freaking crazy if he gets ruled out. Hopefully he plays. And then Kuzma at 5,300. We saw him play 36 minutes last time out, which is lovely for a guy that's 5,300 and has a decent usage rate. And especially about Giannis, I like this role for him on this team. So love Lillard, love Portis, love Kuzma. I have a like on all of them. And they're my top 3 highest owned players on this slate. And it's not really close. Portis and Kuzma are pretty much showing up in every line. And I'm okay with that. If they burn me, they burn me. I don't play scared like that. I'm just going to go heavy on them because it makes sense for me too. Ooh, Jesse, Kuzma or Pritchard last man in. For now, I would say Kuzma is the right play. But if Brown gets ruled out, that increases the likelihood of Pritchard. Even if Tatum gets ruled out, it makes it more of a discussion. But for now, Kuzma's the right call there. All right. So that's pretty much the Bucks for me. I love those 3. Outside of that, not overly excited about it. I like other centers a bit more than Brook Lopez on the slate, but not a crazy play. And then Gary Trent Jr. showing up in 5% of my lines at 3,900. It's fine. I'm not going to X him out, but I don't love that play. All right. For the Pelicans, we have more injury news. They already had Murray out. CJ McCollum's out too, which should boost Jose Alvarado into the starting lineup for the Pelicans. Jose is a solid defender. He can get involved from a scoring perspective, especially when they are lacking offensive talent, which they are right now. So I expect his usage to be pretty solid. 5K is the right price tag for him. He's going to be super chalk on this slate with CJ out, but it's for good reason. The matchup is tough against the Thunder, but again, at 5K, him seeing 30-plus minutes tonight is not a situation I'm trying to overthink. Alvarado is going to be a core play for me tonight. And then Hawkins is a Sim-Model play. Sim-Model liked him a little bit, so I put a like on him. And he's showing up in about 12% of my lines. Jordan Hawkins isn't someone I ever want to see as a core play, but getting some leverage on him, a streaky shooter, relatively low usage rate, so that's why you get nervous about a guy like that. He's someone I like being over the field on a lot. So 12%, solid, exactly what you're looking for there. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the Pelicans. A team you don't want to get overly excited about because of the tough matchup against the Thunder and the gigantic spread, which shouldn't impact Alvarado too much. Next up for the Thunder, we have, let's see, OKC. No real new injury news. They're pretty healthy. Cason Wallace is out, but doesn't change too much for me. The tough thing here is SGA's matchup kind of got worse with CJ McCollum and Murray out because those two, they're just not great defenders, whereas Jose Alvarado is a decent defender and he's going to be out there more than he was going to be. The good thing about SGA is he's pretty much matchup proof, so we don't really have to worry about that too much. He's only 5% owned. It's really easy for me to get leverage when we have decent value on this slate, so I like having some exposure to him. And then Wiggins, Dort, Caruso, these guys see a boost with Cason Wallace out. Sim Model liked Aaron Wiggins and Lou Dort a little bit, so I just put a like on them to see if they would show up a bit more with that, but they don't. So I don't care enough about them to force it. The only player I did something to make sure he showed up was SGA, and I put a 10% min on him. But he's not my favorite stud or anything. What's up? Code Red said, how do your NBA projections compare to other sites? I mean, I've only used our projections, and it's helped me win 6 figures twice and multiple tournament takedowns, so I'll never use another place's projections. It's been clutch for me. All I've needed was to just kind of focus on some of the low-owned studs, and that's been the method for me winning. But it's like any site where some nights are going to be better than yours or others. You're not going to win every night. I'll never say that. But if you're interested in using or having access to the Domination Station, feel free to use the promo code BOB for 10% discount and link in the description. I haven't used that in a while, so that was new. But yeah, projections are really, in my opinion, best in the industry. And I keep watch on pretty much all the sites. X Factor said, is Clint Capella injured? I'm sorry, I can't understand the min restriction. We'll get there soon. For the Thunder, though, like I said, SGA is really the only guy I'm focusing on. This Kings Mavericks game is super interesting to me. It's the second highest total game on the slate, and it has the closest spread. That's a situation where I assume there would be a lot of ownership, but there's not. And I get it. The Kings are a tough team to trust. They have been not great, but I like picking on the Mavs, especially when AD's not playing. And AD's going to be out for a while, and they don't have great centers. And Sabonis can be a slate-breaking center, and he's only 3% owned. I love Sabonis on this slate in this spot. I have a 10% min on him, but if he was higher owned, I would have been willing to go significantly above that. So I really like him a lot in this spot. And then for the rest of the Kings, they don't show up, which is unfortunate because I actually like them, but I'm not going to go crazy. DeRozan at 6,700 just feels a little cheap for me in a matchup that, again, is not tough, especially when Luka's gone and they're playing at a faster pace. I like playing the Kings here. And so I'm going to put a 10% min on DeRozan. I have interest in Levine. I'm just going to do a 6% min. Again, just adding these guys into the mix because they're not showing up in my lines right now. If they were, I wouldn't force it. But since they aren't, I'm going to have to force the issue here. But Sabonis is the leverage play there. He's the guy I like the most. And then let's go ahead and run it, and we'll be good. Cool. And then for Dallas, this team isn't standing out a lot for me, but the sim model liked Gafford and PJ Washington. I had to take the like off of Gafford because he was showing up in too many lines. We'll see how much he's showing up in this most recent run. Man, Code Res, you've been missing out. Last 2 years have been good. Just said Franz and Paolo in the same line as smart player. Should I play one more than the other? I don't like playing them both together, Jesse, in the same line, really just because of the low game total. They both can go off. I wouldn't make a rule out of it if you were MMEing, but it sounds like you're looking at one line in particular, and I would try to avoid that on a 9-gamer. But let's double check it. Let's see if the DS made any lines with those two together. Looks like it made 4. And let's see what they look like. Like it forced Scary Terry in a line. Don't love that. This one's not bad. It's just tough to see both of those guys going off. Yeah, you can still get some decent lines with both of them in there. But I still like seeing Franz with a guy like Naz Reid. Franz with Kuzma, like that combination a bit more than Franz with Paolo. Good question, though. I didn't think about it too much. Code Res said, last question. It's fine if it's not. If you had to set a max percentage, what would you set it at? Planning on running 100 teams in a 25% league on FanDuel. I do use a global max, and it's at 99%. just to kind of still allow a ton of every player. In NFL, you can get away with having a 60% global max and just kind of having a nice balance. In NBA, it's usually good to have significant ownership to a few players in particular. All right. So yeah, we're looking at the Mavs. So we have they fell. Okay, so PJ Washington's only at 9% now. Exum showing up in 1% of my lines, but no Gafford at all. Huh. Gafford at 7,400, they do not have a lot of center options anymore, and so he's going to have to play as much as he possibly can tonight. So that's why he's one of my bigs on the slate I want to see show up. And so he's someone I will put a min on if I have to. So we'll get there. All right. Next up, we have Portland going up against the Nuggets. This Portland team has been tough. It's been a tough team to see on a slate just because they've been keeping games pretty close, but there hasn't been too many just like outliers from a DFS standpoint. Aiton's been seeing 30, 32 minutes, so I'm not overly concerned about a minutes limit here. He's been, at 6,700. Matchup's not brutal. Let me double check, look a little bit closer at it, see how. The Nuggets have been giving up the 7th most fantasy points to post bigs. So this is just a spot I like for Ayton. He's not showing up for me, though. So I am going to put a 4% min on him just to get him to show up a bit more for me. And that's going to be it. Simons I do kind of like Simons. I like playing guards against the Nuggets. I'll put an 8% min on him, 8% on Simons, 4% on Ayton, and then we'll be good to go. All right. And then for the Nuggets, let's see. Denver. Michael Porter Jr. is questionable. That's big. We would see Strother start, and then guys like Gordon, Murray, all of the other starters see a boost too when Porter Jr. is out. I like Porter Jr. if he plays. I have a 6% min on him. Sim model liked him as well, so I just wanted to make sure I had some exposure. Christian Brown is really good at 6,100. He's been playing a ton of minutes. Matchup is solid here against Portland. Gonna double check those. Yep. Portland's been giving up the most fantasy points to shooting wings, and so again, I like the spot for Brown. It's hard to get overly excited about Brown typically, but he's been good recently. He put up 38 fantasy points against Phoenix, 37 against Orlando, 2 decent defenses, 46 against the Pelicans, a bad defense. So we're playing him at 6,100. It seems crazy, but he has that 40-point upside in a spot like this. And so that's why I did prioritize him enough to put a min on him. And then that's pretty much it from the Pelicans. I do have a 3% min on Jokic. Nothing in particular about this spot. It's pretty neutral. He's just a guy I'm always going to have exposure to unless there's a reason I shouldn't, which there rarely is. JM said, would you play Gary Trent in a single entry line? Ooh. If Lillard is out, yeah, for sure. He's fine. But I'm assuming you're saying if Lillard is playing, would I look at him? Let me see. Do I have any lines with Gary Trent? He's in about 7% of them. Even with him in, I'm not getting any like real super expensive studs, or I'm not seeing 2 studs show up too often. Really at all. Let me look a little bit closer at Trent in particular. I'm leaning towards no so far. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. He did have that 43-point game against Philadelphia literally yesterday. But if anything, a player having their best game of the season the night before makes me even less willing to want to play them. Yeah, he's fine. I wouldn't go there in single entry on this slate. Let's see. 3,900. Let's see if there's any other options down here that are a little bit better. So we have Gary Trent, Al Horford. I don't really have too many 3K guys, but I do like Nick Smith at 4K. I would prefer him over Gary Trent if you can afford the $100 difference. Tattoo said, give me one lower ownership guy or gal, I guess if they identify that way, to use in a small field, high dollar single entry. My favorite low ownership guys are going to be pricey, but let's look at them. Well, where is it? There we go. Okay. So it's really for me between SGA, Sabonis, and Wemby. But Victor's ownership has gone up. It was around like 8-9% earlier. Now it's 11%. It's only gone up like 2%, but that's a little significant for me. Whereas I had a 15% min on him, and that was leverage. Now there's still literally leverage there, but it's not me getting double the field leverage. So that makes me more excited about the plays I do have double the field leverage. And so I'm looking like Sabonis or SGA. And for me, it's going to be Sabonis. He's going to be that low-owned stud for me on this slate. That's my favorite. Wow. We got through all the games. Yeah, that's pretty much everything, y'all. I will stick around for a little bit longer to answer any more questions if there are any, but let's just do one last look. I like these core plays. Nick Smith is a little high. I do like him a lot, but I don't want him in more than 50% of my line. So I'm just going to cap him at 50. He has slate breaking upside, but he more likely than not is just breaking your lines. Jordan Poole starting to fall a little bit. Don't love that. No, Sabonis is still showing up a good bit. Those are the men's. Terry Rozier with that hero news is starting to show up a bit more naturally in our lines about us having to force it at all, which I'm totally comfortable with. We have Gary Trent. Al Horford is showing up a little bit as some value on the slate. Derek White's the player we forced exposure to. And then right now, I don't really have any Curry, which is a bit concerning, especially with him just being questionable. That's one that we're going to have to just keep a really close eye on, because if we get news that he's playing, or if we get closer to lock, I'm willing to just put a min on him and just force him in. Beat up, what's up, man? If you refresh again, Rozier will pop even more. Well, he was the usage rate play we found when we were doing that. Oh, holy shit. 5.82 over dollar. He's probably going to be a core play, isn't he? Damn. You think you get away with something. And I was like, he hasn't been that great. I don't have to play him. And then the DS is like, you shall. And I'm not going to question it. Not going to question it. We almost got there ourselves. So if that's what the DS wants us to do, then so be it. Victor worries me a bit today. He hasn't done well since Fox joined them. Yeah, Victor is a bit worrisome. I liked him more when he was lower owned, but the matchup's so soft, I'm just going to do it. If it's just if he was, honestly, I would play him in this matchup pretty much every time. He's been volatile. It's not safe, but I'm doing it. Jesse, are we getting 30-point area or 10-point scary? Oh, fuck. He's showing up in 77% of my lines. God, life is just never easy on us, y'all. That's what's lowering Lillard's exposure, and that's what helped Nick Smith fall a bit more. Jordan Poole, those ownerships are going to be a little bit lower than they were. Jordan Poole, someone I do want to keep around 35-40%. Don't want him to fall too much. Yeah, Nick Smith is always banged up. It's serious, though. It's something we got to keep a close eye out for, too. They do call him Scary Terry for a reason. Terry burned you last time? Oh, no. Oh, we're setting ourselves up, aren't we? Okay, wait. Let's think here. Let me see. We have his ownership projected for 20%. So his ownership's gone up a good bit. Let me see where we think ownership's going to fall. Is it going to be around 20? Because if it's around 20, I don't feel like we have to have him as a core play. Like, if we can do a little bit better. Okay, so we saw 33 fantasy points last time out. He is 4,800. We need him at that price tag to hit 7x to win us a GPP on a 9-gamer. He needs to score 33 fantasy points, which is exactly what he did last time out against Brooklyn. And he's been scoring like 35, 36, 30. The concern is in a soft matchup against Chicago, he only had 12.5 points. So it can get ugly real fast if he's not hitting his shots. He was 2 for 12 that night. Bad usage rate. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I don't even know why I'm talking about it. At 20% ownership, that price tag is not like he rarely hits 30 fantasy points. That's what we need him to hit tonight. He can do that. 33, ideally. Just a little nervous about it, but the core is coming together. We have Portis, Kuzma, Rozier, Gafford, and Alvarado. I'm just going to lock that in, call it a day. I'm going to go ahead and boost Alvarado, put a 60% min on him, make him a core play. And we're just going to lock that shit in. Sabonis as a leverage. Love that one. Let's see what happens. He burned me. He's going to burn me today if that's the case. I think he's going to help us win, though. Thomas Dye said, are we treating this as a Joe Val? Play it again. Yep, just going to play it again. Play it again. B-Dub said, looking around 30%. Well, I'm going to be double the field. Poole or Simons on FanDuel. Let me look, JM. Let me look. FanDuel. You said Poole. I want to say Poole, but I just need to double check the pricing first. Where did it go? Point guard. Simons, Poole. Yeah, it's Poole for me. Simons is about 800 cheaper than Poole. But yeah, still going to be Poole between those two. Yep, you just got to embrace the pain and just touch the grill and hopefully win a prize for it. All right, y'all. I appreciate everyone being here. Feel free to click the like button. Always appreciate that. Won't be back tomorrow or Wednesday. I have to travel Thursday, so probably won't be back until Friday. Well, there's no show Friday. So Thursday, it's a late slate, so I'll try to make it for that one. And it's the last slate before the All-Star break. So I'll see you all Thursday. We'll make that happen. Good luck. Peace out. Much love.